Okay, here we are. We're doing Common Core Standards. Here's the reading. AREI 4, which stands for it is algebra, reasoning with equations and inequalities. So it's solve quadratic equations in one variable. And that's what we're doing. We're solving quadratic equations in one variable. Well, how does that work? Let's go back through the reading. So in the reading we talked about zeros. And 0 is any value that makes the parabola equal to 0. Okay? It's also called roots. That's another name. In fact, we're going to take a look at roots, zeros, and x-intercepts is really being the same thing for right now. We'll talk about the difference between them as we progress in this chapter. Okay? So when you find a 0, it's any value. One way to find it is you can find it by graphing. And you look for the x-intercepts, and the x-intercepts would be zeros. That's one way to do it. Just look at your graph and find out where it crosses the x-axis. Okay, on 3, roots. For right now, roots are the same as zeros. Any value that makes it equal to 0 is going to be a root or a 0. Okay, example 4 talks about something being kicked up in the air, h of t, height over time. So this is gravity, negative 16t squared. It's going to be the same. This is always gravity. V0 is your velocity, your initial velocity. So how hard do you kick the ball up or how hard do you throw it up? So that number is usually given to you. And h of 0 is your starting height. Where do you start the ball when you kick it up? Okay, we'll look at that also in our notes. 5, how many roots does a quadratic have? Always 2. All right, we'll always have 2. Okay, chapter number 6, we'll talk about the special factors when we go through the notes. Okay, it has to do with factoring. Okay, so that is the reading. Hopefully you have that in front of you. Let's look at our notes for the day, okay? Here we go. Algebra 2 notes, 5.3. Again, a common core standard is AREI 4, which is solving quadratics. That's what we're doing is quadratics. By the way, quadratics are x squared equations. Solving quadratics in one variable. And the variable of choice is always x, okay? So solving quadratics in one variable. AREI 4. Okay, first of all, zeros. So to find zeros, we're going to remember that zeros and x-intercepts and roots are for right now all the same thing. We'll distinguish the difference eventually. So whenever you see zeros, roots, or x-intercepts, then find the zeros. To find the zeros, set y equal to 0. So we go 0 equals x squared plus 2x minus 3. So we set the equation equal to 0. And now let's factor. All right, I can factor that. 2 sets of parentheses, x and x, because that'll make my x squared. Multiples of negative 3 that make a positive 2 would have to be a positive 3 and a negative 1. Okay, that is factored correctly, but we haven't solved it yet. So we're going to have to solve it because it is set equal to 0 because we're looking for the zeros. So what we get is 2 little mini equations. And I'll do those over here where I have room. I go 0 equals x plus 3 and 0 equals x minus 1. All right. So to solve, let's go minus 3, minus 3. So one of the zeros is x equals negative 3, plus 1, and the other 0 is 1. Okay? Those are the zeros. Well, how can you check your answer? Well, if we plug it in, we should get an answer of 0, right? And that's what the definition of a 0 is. So let's plug it in. I'd have y equals, let's do the first one, negative 3 squared plus 2 times negative 3 minus 3. So I'm just going to plug it in. And if I get an answer of 0, then negative 3 is a 0. Okay, let me let the calculator do the work for me. Why not, right? So if I go and plug in negative 3, I'll go negative 3 squared plus 2 times negative 3, subtract 3, I get an answer of 0, which it should be 0 because x equals negative 3 is a 0. If I plug in the 1, same thing will happen. We'll get y equals 0 squared plus 2 times 0 minus 3. Oops, I'm sorry, 1. I'm wrong. 1. We're plugging in 1. And you will get 0, which means that 1 is a 0. There we go. Plug in 1. Okay, that's not too hard. Okay, example 2. Oh, I see a typo. Shouldn't be a z there. It should be just x squared minus 8x plus 12. Sorry for the typo. So if we're going to find the zeros, set it equal to 0. Okay, again, I'm going to factor. And if I'm going to factor, let's go parentheses, x. I think negative 6 and negative 2 will multiply to make a 12 and add to make a negative 8. Okay, so take this, set it equal to 0, and solve, because we're going to solve, right? And we'll take our x minus 2 and set it equal to 0. Plus 6, one answer is 6. That is a 0. Plus 2, x equals 2 is a 0. Okay, we just have to factor and solve. Okay, example 3. Okay, find the zeros. So set it equal to 0. 3x squared plus 12x. Now this one we're going to factor slightly differently. We're going to common factor. Okay, to common factor, I'm going to take a look at what they have in common. See, they have a common multiple of 3, and they have a common x. So a common factor out the 3x, and then one set of parentheses. Okay, so if I take out a 3x, I'll be left with an x here. Take out a 3x, I'll have a 4. Okay, again, I'm solving. So set them both equal to 0. 3x equals 0, and x plus 4 equals 0. I'm just going to solve. Don't get tricked by this one. Just divide by 3. Divide by 3. Don't get tricked by it. 0 divided by 3 is just 0. Okay, that is a 0. The 0 is a 0. Okay, minus 4, minus 4. The other one is negative 4. Okay, there's your two zeros, at 0 and at negative 4. Okay, ready to turn the page? All right, here we go. Example 4. Find the roots. All right, so if I set this equal to 0, because roots and zeros mean the same thing for right now. Okay, so I got a factor. Well, same thing. I'm going to go two sets of parentheses, x. What are the multiples of negative 9? How about a positive 3 and a negative 3? And they do add up to 0, which there is a 0 middle term. I mean, really, it still works. That times that makes a negative 9, but if I add them, I still get a middle term of 0. Okay? All right, now, this is easy to solve. So let's solve it now. I've factored. Let's solve. So I'll do that over here where I have room. 0 equals x plus 3, and I'll have a 0 equals an x minus 3. Minus 3, minus 3. One answer is negative 3. That's one root. Plus 3, the other is 3. That's the other root. Remember, root and zeros and x-intercepts all mean the same thing for right now. Okay, example 5. Now, example 5 is kind of a hard one to factor, but I think we can do it. First of all, I like to have everything in order. This 40x is in the wrong place. I need to bring the 40x and put it right there, because I need to put them in order. X squared, x term, and then constant term. So if I do that, if I bring the 40 over, I'm going to have a 0, because the 40 is gone. It will be an 8x squared, and I have to subtract the 40x, bring it over. So minus 40x plus 50. Now that looks kind of hard to factor, so what I'd like to do is make smaller numbers. What I notice is that all three of these numbers are divisible by 2. So I'm going to take the entire equation, divide everything by 2. Okay, when I divide 0 by 2, it's just 0. So I'm actually making this problem a lot easier for myself. I'll get a 4x squared minus a 20x plus a 25. Okay, now this I could probably factor. Let's see. Let's go parentheses, 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 parentheses. Okay. Well, if I need to make a 4x squared, let's have a 2x and a 2x. 2x times 2x is 4x squared. The way I'm going to make a 25 is with 5 and 5. Now I got a negative 20x here. So watch real carefully. Everybody watching? Everybody watching? 2x times 5 is a 10x. 2x times 5, that makes a 10x. And 5 times 2x makes another 10x. So I got a 10x with this. There's my 10x. I get another 10x. See my double smiley? 10x, 10x makes a 20x together. But if I need a negative 20, I'm going to go negative, negative. Okay? Okay, that is factored. 2x minus 5 and another 2x minus 5. Now that's kind of the same thing. So to solve, I'm going to take my 2x minus 5 and set it equal to 0. Plus 5, divide by 2, and I get 2.5. And what happens is you get also 2.5 here. So we get it twice. We'll get 2.5 from both parts. So you get x equals 2.5, and you'll get another x equals 2.5. Yes, that's the same answer, but it happens twice. That is called a double root. If you get the same answer twice, it's called a double root, okay? Because you should always have two answers. Okay, example 6. We're getting close. What we want to do is take it from the answer back to the original. So we've got our answers. We want to make something that looks like this. Make something that looks like this. Or make something that looks like this. So let's go backwards. If x equals 2 is an answer, then that would have come from an x minus 2 equals 0, because that would have been the answer from solving it. If x minus 1 is an answer, then that would have come from an x plus 1 equals 0. Okay, now those are the zeros, but in factored form, I could rewrite this as y is equal to an x minus 2 times an x plus 1. Okay, now that's factored form. If we want that in standard form, then I'm going to take this and just FOIL it out. So if I have y equals an x minus 2 times an x plus 1, so if I have it written out in factored form, if I want to put it in standard form, I'm just going to FOIL. X times x, x squared. X times 1 is a 1x. Negative 2 times x and negative 2x, and a negative 2 times 1 is a negative 2. Okay, so that will simplify into x squared minus 1x minus 2. So this quadratic, when factored, will give me these answers. So here's the original quadratic. Okay, example 7, almost done. Okay, so here it is. Soccer ball is kicked in the air. It goes straight up and comes back down. How long does it take to get its highest height, and at what time? So first of all, I'm going to put a plus 0 here. Now I know the ball starts at ground 0 because of plus 0, and it's going to go all the way up and then come back down and hit. Okay. What I'd like to know is its highest height. Okay, if I look at this picture, this kind of makes sense. That's a vertex. Aha! We talked about this yesterday. How do we find a vertex? Well, we're going to use x equals negative b over 2a. That's what we used yesterday, right? So, if I want negative b over 2a, I'm going to go, in this case, t instead of x, t because it's time, negative b, which is negative 32, over 2 times a, which is negative 16, okay? So just negative b over 2a, negative 32 over 2 times negative 16. That's going to be 32 over 32, which is 1. Okay, so let's go back to my vertex. My vertex is at 1 something. So this is a time. After 1 second, it's its highest height. What's that height? Well, plug it in. So take my 1, and we'll go, okay, h of 1 is equal to negative 16 times 1 squared plus 32, 2 times 1, and that turns out to be 16. Okay, you can use your calculator. It is 16. Okay, here we go. We know this, that after 1 second, it's 16 feet high. Now, when does it hit the ground? All right. Well, the height when it hits the ground is 0. So we'll set the height equal to 0. When it hits the ground, the height is 0. So set it equal to 0. Okay, let's just solve for t. Well, I'm going to factor. I factor out a negative 16t. because that's what they have in common. I'd have a t minus 2. If I solve for t, I would get 0, and I would get 2. That makes sense, because that's 0, and that's my 2. Okay, homework. Page 338, 5 to 10 all. I want you guys working on this, not goofing off, and I'll be back tomorrow.